And I've said what I had to say about Shannon Sharp. It is an appropriate transition to go from him to Skip Bayless. Skip Bayless and I don't talk too much these days. We're too busy focusing on our own shows. And one could say competing with one another. I don't view it that way, but I understand if anybody else does. Skip Bayless and I have really gone back, just recently gone back and forth, because he told the story with Richard Sherman on their first day, August 28th, when he was talking to Richard Sherman about what their beef was years ago when they appeared on First Take together. And Skip Bayless was explaining some things, and he was talking about how we were on probation, but it wasn't because of me. So when Richard Sherman attacked him, Skip couldn't hit back at him because we were trying to get a show on in the afternoon, which was true. We were trying to get a show on in the afternoon. And that was why Skip did not go right back at Richard Sherman when Richard Sherman attacked him and called him a cretin and said, I'm better at life than you, and all of this other stuff. But Skip Bayless, in telling that story and recalling that story, took the liberty of pointing out how we were going through a probationary period, but it wasn't because of him. It had nothing to do with him. And I challenged that when I saw that, and I came on my podcast and I explained. I came right here and I explained. That wasn't entirely true. Okay? And so I had my own comments. And I want to play those comments for you right now. What I said that Skip took umbrage with. Play that, please. They had accused Skip Bayless, meaning the public, of being a caricature of himself. And even though Skip was incredibly proud of his Tim Tebow coverage, the bosses weren't necessarily enamored with it. I wasn't the only reason that probationary period per se existed. It existed because the network wanted to make sure that our show wasn't one that just generated ratings, but one that didn't cause them embarrassment and shame. That is where the probationary period came from, too. If you know anything about Skip Bayless, he's going to have something to say. He's earned that right. He has that right. And he took the liberty of going on his own podcast to, not necessarily his word, but the word of the headlines, to sort of set me straight about what actually happened. Here was his response to my assertions on his own podcast.
To all of the above, I say baloney. There was no shtick involved in all those shows we did on Tim Tebow. I was just me. Actually, the reason we were on probation was something that Rob Parker said about Robert Griffin on First Take. This was in December of 2012. Stephen A. Smith, I love you, man. I really do, with all my heart and soul. But that is the whole truth and nothing but the truth. So help me God.
Skip Bayless, that is not the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God. So I don't mean to go against you or God himself, but I'm going to, in this particular instance, if the Lord himself disagreed with you, or agreed with you and disagreed with me, rather, I'm going to go against that. Love you too, brother. Always will. But let's get one thing straight right now. I don't lie. And I'm certainly not saying that you do, but I don't. Ain't important enough to lie, to be quite honest with you. So let's set the record straight with specifically that point. I don't recall my suspension being a part of the probationary period. I don't recall bringing that up because that did happen in 2014. You're absolutely right. And you are right when you bring up Rob Parker and what he wants, your colleague at Fox Sports 1 now. And those of you, by the way, who don't know, Rob Parker and I are very close. Rob Parker is a mentor and a friend who has been my friend for nearly 40 years. And to put it in its proper perspective, he's the godfather to my youngest daughter. That's how close Rob Parker and I are. So I don't bring that up to throw anything in his direction, but Skip was right about that being a part of the probationary period. What Skip is either wrong about or has forgotten was that the honchos at ESPN were not happy with the constant Tebow coverage every day. Jamie Horowitz was happy, our former boss. Skip was very happy. The ratings, it was generating ratings. Nobody's saying it was failing. But because the show was about Tim Tebow every day before I arrived, that was a problem for the bosses, Skip. You know that. So much so, Skip. Remember when you wondered aloud in a very stressful fashion? And I'm not getting in anybody's private business. I would never do that to you. You felt they gave you the impression that they were ashamed of the Tebow coverage, and you pounded your fist on the table and said, I'm proud of it. And I should be proud of it because we had the ratings. And I said to you, yeah, but we might not need to tell them that because we want to get on in the afternoons. Remember that? I do. No one is saying that Tim Tebow did not generate ratings. Nobody is saying that the show was not successful. Nobody is saying that the public at large, while some people abhorred it, a lot of people loved it. Nobody is saying that. All I'm saying is that by name, John Skipper, Norby Williamson, and John Waldhack, the three bosses who were in charge of ESPN at that time, was not proud of the coverage that the show was getting because they thought it compromised what they wanted their network to represent, and they would much rather have preferred people was leaning on SportsCenter, this flagship show, rather than that. That is a fact. And for anybody that doubts me, John Skipper is now partnered with Dan Lebertard with Metalog Media. Ask him. John Wildhack is a sports editor the athletic director at Syracuse University. Ask him. Norby Williamson still at ESPN. I'm telling the truth. I just wanted to say that. It's not throwing any shade on you, Skip. I wouldn't do that. I'm just saying that me or Rob Parker were not the only reason we were on probation. It has something to do with you too. That's all I'm saying. Nothing more than that. Absolutely nothing more than that. So help me God. And I love you too. And you know that.